Hi, welcome to Chad Silversmithing. Before we get started today, if I could ask you to hit the like button before you leave, that helps out a great deal. I also love it when people leave comments, so if you could kind of let me know what you think or give suggestions for video ideas, those are all great things. Today I'm going to make some Art Deco-ish sort of earrings, and I picked out a couple of 6x8 um, emerald cut synthetic rubies. They're kind of wing shaped, and that's what drew me to them. I saw a drawing of them online, which I think was just a mock-up, but I'm going to do a variation of these. I'm replacing the upper wing part with a stone and then leaving the lower wing part. But it looks to me very, very Art Deco, so I like it, and I'm going to give it a shot. Before we do that, though, I wanted to thank my YouTube subscribers. We passed 6,400. That's amazing. You guys are awesome. Thank you for all of your kind comments, financial support, suggestions, all those things. I really appreciate it. And just for taking the time to watch my videos. That's very nice of you. I wanted to thank my patrons over on Patreon. They're paying for my premium content, and I have a new patron over there. I wanted to thank Roz for signing up. I'm really glad that you did, and I look forward to getting to know you over there. Let's get started. Alright, let's look and see what I drew up here. This is my design idea book. I have 3 different versions of these you can get on my merch store if you're interested. It's a good way to support my channel. I like them because they have this little grid that helps me to keep things sort of symmetrical, which I don't do by nature. So this is what I drew up. I saw an original drawing was kind of like this one here, somewhere online, I don't remember where, but I really liked the style, so whoever came up with that, that's a good idea, I like it. But definitely just smacks of Art Deco to me with these repeated triangle shapes and kind of the wing look. So I'm drawn to it a little bit. I like stuff like that, apparently. So instead of doing this upper part, though, if I had like a good, rounded triangle-shaped stone that I thought would go here, I might just replace this with some flat sheet and put a triangular-shaped stone there, maybe in the corner. But I really didn't have anything that suited that well. So I'm going to try doing. I have these synthetic rubies that are like 6x8 emerald cuts, and hopefully you can see that. And I think those will be pretty if I put them right here. So I'm just going to create a couple of bezels for these, add some rings, and then I have to construct these going in opposite directions. And I think I'm going to probably use 22 gauge sheet to keep the weight down a little bit. I thought about using 18, but earrings can get to be pretty heavy when you're using 18 gauge sheet, so I think I'm going to try 22. The thing is, this is going to be the top one, and then I'm going to slide them underneath, and they're gradually going to get further back, I think. Or should I do it the other way? I think I want this one to be the front one with the big long one. And then so what that means is for each of these I'm going to have to cut them just a little bit longer. Right, kind of just slightly longer, so I can solder this underneath that one, or this one on top of that one just slightly. So basically I think most of the time here we're going to be making triangles out of some 22 gauge sheet. So first I'm going to make a bezel to show you how I make a bezel for a faceted stone, and then we'll get to work constructing the rest of it. If you haven't watched my videos before, I use hard silver sheet solder, and I use a spray-on flux called My-T-Flux. Where did I put my solder at? It's amazing how quickly I can lose something. I'm going to use, these are pretty big, bold stones. These are 4x6s. I think I'm going to use a little bit thicker bezel for this, the 26 gauge. And it's a 3/16 inch fine silver bezel strip. And since these are basically going to sit by themselves with just a step made out of some sterling silver wire on the inside to support the stone, there's not much substance to them, so that's why I'm choosing to go with a little bit thicker bezel, just to make it a little stronger. Okay, so let's file this and get this all ready to go. Earlier I was watching a video by Boom Jewelry Designs about making castellated bezels, which I've never actually done. So you should, if you haven't, check out Benny's channel over there, Boom Jewelry Designs. He makes some really interesting stuff, and he's got a great personality. He's also in Colorado, like I am. These are emerald cuts, so I have a little bit of excess on each corner because emerald cuts really, if you look at them close, they're octagonal, and so they have kind of 4 big sides and 4 little sides, one on each corner. So they're not truly a rectangle. But it's hard to bend those in when you're doing the bezel like this, so rather than do that, I'm going to eyeball, get it as tight as I can as a rectangle, and then make an estimate about, normally I would add a little bit extra here. I'm going to go a little bit less on this one to compensate for those little bends inward. We'll see how close I get. I think Benny's channel is definitely worth a subscribe. I don't know if you noticed, but when you're doing a faceted stone bezel, measuring the bezel is easier if you set the faceted stone upside down, so that the pavilion part is pointing upwards, which is the kind of pointy part on the bottom. It's just easier to get an accurate measurement of the bezel. Bezels don't have a very large amount of mass, so you solder them, it doesn't take very long to get them up to the 1450 degrees that hard silver solder melts at. So that's like about 4 or 5 seconds usually. That's one of the things that as a beginner I really struggled with years ago, because if you linger too long with the heat, your bezel's going to start to pull apart and start to melt pretty quickly. You gotta be quick. For something like this, I'm going to try and put the solder joint on the long side of the rectangle there, or octagon I should say. I think we're pretty good. I wanted it pretty snug, so I didn't have a lot of excess in there, and it's definitely snug. So our next step, after we get this to a shape that we are pleased with, which I am not quite yet, for the little step that I'm going to create here, I'm going to use a couple of layers of 18 gauge round wire, which is not what everybody does, but it's a convenient way for me to do these. So let me find my 18 gauge. I definitely wouldn't end it in a corner, because that'll make it hard to get each of the corners symmetrical. So let's go ahead and figure out where to bend that other one. Like that. I got that pretty close. Wonders never cease. Let's see where we're at. That one's, I cut that one a little bit short, so I'll put that one on top of the other one. So I'm going to try and get the next one perfect. So I want the bottom one not to have a gap at all. Just a tiny bit too big. Like I said, I'd rather have it a little bit too big because I can snip a little piece out. Adjust where everything's bent just a little bit. That's about right. Alright, I want to make sure this is all nice and flat. Snug. Push this all the way down. If you don't get them to lay down nice and flat, the platform your stone is going to sit on won't be flat, and so it'll be hard to set it. Alright, so I have plenty of solder here. What I'm going to do is flux this and just make a little pile of solder and set this on top of it, and it should draw it right up in there. And after I cool it off, generally file it flat. So I'm going to go ahead and make another one off camera so you don't have to watch me do the same thing twice. To save time, I cut all these little pieces, which will be these little individual pieces here. Biggest one being this one here, and then gradually getting smaller. And I may need to do some fine tuning to these, but they're generally about the right size. I cut them just a little bit wider than this so that they would be able to overlap each other, with the exception of this one. But I think we need to start with the smallest one and work our way up. So let's do that first one and see how it goes. I do have some solder there already. I think that's our next one, hopefully. This one should end up being, you know, about a 90-degree angle to that one. I did it right. It's pretty close. Not like that. Let's solder that and see how it looks. Okay, with the exception of a little trimming and stuff, I think that's pretty good. I may need to file the back a little thinner over here. Let's see. Either way, I'm going to do the other one off camera. We'll see how they come out. And we'll hook them all together. Okay, so I got two of those, relatively similar. And I made some little tiny jump rings out of 20 gauge round wire that I wrapped around a piece of 14 gauge round wire to make some very small rings. And I was going to solder them onto the tops of these guys. It's like one right here, and one right there. I'm going to add a little bit of extra solder. Now I have these two bezels, and I want to put rings on these too. Sometimes little tiny rings like this, when they flow, surface tension of the solder will actually flip them vertically, so you have to pull them back down. Before I hook these together, I'm going to put the ear wire in, and in order to do that, I'm going to push these into a soft pad so those rings don't fall off. This is called a magnesia block. That way, even if those solder joints reflow, which they probably will, there's nowhere for the rings to go. So I'm going to flux the ends of both of these, pick up a little bit of solder, and put them right. I'm going to put the post on the bottom here, in between those two rings, basically. So. pretty easy to pick up a little solder with a piece of wire like that. I'm going to use a little tiny bit more than a 20 gauge to make some slightly bigger jump rings to hook those together, and I need 4 of them. So that'll hang like that. To solder these ones together, I'm going to do the same thing I did a minute ago, except try to situate it so that the solder joint is upright. Okay, so in theory, because I don't really want any solder to flow anywhere else, I'm just going to heat the ring itself for each of these with a little bit of solder on the pick. So let's do that real quick. I think we're copacetic now, so I'm going to let those pickle and then we'll come back and finish them up. So I don't know if you can see, but I went ahead and set one of them after I polished, and I'll do a little bit of final cleanup with a rotary tool, but I think that's going to be pretty. So I think I have this one filed down about right. Let's see. Set him really quick. Hopefully really quick. It's a little challenging to set stuff when you have floppy stuff hanging off of it, but I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot here. The other thing is, you don't want to keep bending this ear wire too much. I used to tear them off when I was polishing a lot when I tried to do this kind of stuff, but you do want to kind of try to prevent it from getting worked back and forth too much right at the base, because it'll break off. Last thing I usually do when I've soldered on some posts like this is they're pretty squishy soft after you've soldered them on because you annealed the metal when you did that. So I'm going to gently twist it a few times, carefully, so as not to break it off, but to actually work harden that along the entire length. I'll go about 1 centimeter. File these ends down a little bit. I usually kind of use my wire cutters to just near the end of this, maybe 1/8 of an inch in, kind of spin a little groove into it for whatever ear nut you're using to catch on. Just a little bit. I usually suggest when people have earrings like this that need to sit upright on your ear really well, to use these rubber ones that have rubber ear nuts that have a wide back like that. That'll make it stand up nicely. But that's usually what I do. So I'll get a look here. Hopefully I accomplished something relatively similar to what I was shooting for there. I think those came out pretty close to what I drew up here. All right, I'll take some nice pictures and put them at the end. Well, that was the sort of wing-like Art Deco-ish earrings. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you hit the like button, and maybe check out some other videos that I have here. I've got about 230 last I checked, and I'm putting out 3 per week, one on Tuesday, one on Thursday, and one on Saturday. So there's quite a bit of content coming out. So after you check out a few more videos, maybe you should give me a subscribe. Also, don't forget to check out the video description down below. There's links to my website, my merch store. There's a Buy Me a Coffee link if you want to give me a little financial support. And there's a link to my Patreon site if you want to see what's available over there. So, thanks for watching the video. Take care. Happy silversmithing.